The little alien girl smiled and said, "Mom, that's him." In the room fell silent. Captain Marcus Chun stood in the pristine white medical bay of the Galactic Council's flagship, his weathered hands clasped behind his back as he watched the small figure on the examination table. The little girl couldn't have been more than 8 years old in human terms, though her species, the Zephyrians, aged differently. Her translucent blue skin shimmered under the medical lights, and her large, opalescent eyes held a wisdom that seemed far too ancient for her tiny frame. Dr. Vexari, the Council's chief xenobiologist, adjusted his scanning equipment with his 4 precise tentacles while speaking in hushed tones to the girl's mother. The adult Zephyrian was nearly 7 feet tall, her elegant form radiating the same ethereal quality as her daughter, but her posture spoke of exhaustion and desperation. "The neural pathways are completely scrambled," Dr. Vexari murmured to the assembled medical team. "Whatever happened to her during the Terran conflict has left her in a state of selective amnesia. She remembers fragments, emotions, sensations, but no clear memories of events or people." Marcus shifted uncomfortably. The Terran conflict. 3 months ago, his unit had been deployed to Zephyr Prime during what the Council diplomatically called a peacekeeping mission. In reality, it had been a brutal extraction operation when the planet's government had collapsed into civil war. The memory of burning cities and fleeing civilians still haunted his dreams. The little girl's mother, who had introduced herself as Lirana, spoke in her native tongue to sound like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. The translation device rendered her words: "She has nightmares every night, always the same dream. She cries for someone she calls the gentle giant." Dr. Vexari's head tentacles twitched with interest. Fascinating. The human rescue teams did report several instances of close contact with civilian populations. Perhaps she formed an attachment to one of the soldiers. Marcus felt his throat tighten. He remembered that day with crystal clarity, the day that had changed everything. His squad had been moving through the ruins of Zephyr Prime's capital when they'd heard the crying. Most of his men had wanted to keep moving. Their orders were clear about avoiding civilian contact. But Marcus couldn't ignore the sound of a child in distress. He'd found her trapped under debris in what had once been a beautiful crystalline dwelling. She'd been terrified, speaking rapidly in her native language, her small hands reaching out to him. Without thinking, he'd begun to hum an old earth lullaby his grandmother had sung to him as a child. Something about the melody had calmed her, and she'd let him carry her to safety. "Captain Chun?" Dr. Vexari's voice pulled him from his reverie. "As the commanding officer of the human rescue operation, we hoped you might provide some insight. Do you recall any of your personnel forming a particular bond with this child?" Marcus met the doctor's multifaceted gaze. "The operation was chaotic. My men did their best to help civilians, but we had limited time." A soft gasp from the examination table cut him off. The little girl had been quietly listening to the conversation, her large eyes moving from speaker to speaker. But now she was staring directly at Marcus, her expression transforming from vacant confusion to sudden, brilliant recognition. "Mom," she whispered in perfect Zephyrian, her voice like silver bells. "That's him." The room fell silent. Lirana's breathing quickened as she looked between her daughter and Marcus. Dr. Vexari's equipment began beeping rapidly as the girl's brain activity spiked. The other medical personnel stepped back, uncertain. The little girl slid off the examination table with fluid grace and walked directly to Marcus, who found himself frozen in place. She looked up at him with those ancient knowing eyes and began to hum the same lullaby he had hummed to her 3 months ago in the ruins of her world. "You sang to me," she said softly in heavily accented Standard Galactic. "When the sky was falling and everything was fire, you sang to me. You carried me like I was made of starlight." Marcus felt his composure cracking. He knelt down to meet her at eye level, and she reached out with one small, translucent hand to touch his face. "I remember now," she continued, her voice gaining strength. "You cried when you had to leave me at the shelter. You didn't want to go, but the other humans said you had to. You promised you'd find me again. The medical bay was absolutely still, except for the soft beeping of monitoring equipment. Marcus felt tears he didn't know he'd been holding back begin to fall. I looked for you, he whispered. When the evacuation was complete, I searched every refugee center, every temporary shelter. You've been transferred, and there were no records, I know, she said simply. Mom told me later that the council moved us for safety. But I never forgot your song. I hummed it every night. Lyrena approached slowly, her expression a mixture of wonder and gratitude. When she spoke, her words were directed at Marcus, but her hand rested protectively on her daughter's shoulder. She has spoken of you every day since the evacuation, the mother said. She called you her guardian star. I thought it was trauma creating false memories. I never imagined. Dr. Vexari cleared his throat diplomatically. This is highly irregular. Humans forming emotional bonds with other species is rare, and for a child to retain such specific memories despite neurological trauma is miraculous, Marcus finished, never taking his eyes off the little girl. What's your name, sweetheart? Zarali, she replied, then added shyly. But you can call me Zara if that's easier for your human tongue. Marcus smiled, the first genuine smile he'd worn since leaving. Zephyr Prime, Zara, that's a beautiful name. She beamed at him, her entire face lighting up with joy. Will you sing to me again? The sad song that made everything better? As Marcus began to hum the old lullaby, something remarkable happened. The other Zephyrians in the room, Dr. Vexari's assistants, security personnel, even Harding Council. Officials began to gather around them. The melody seemed to resonate with their species in a way that transcended language barriers. When the song ended, Lyrena placed a graceful hand on Marcus's shoulder. Captain Chun, my daughter has been broken since we left our world. You have given her back the missing piece of her soul. How can we ever repay such a gift? Marcus stood slowly, keeping one hand on Zara's small shoulder. There's no debt, ma'am. I was just doing what anyone would do. No, Dr. Vexari interjected thoughtfully, his tentacles swaying with contemplation. This is distinctly human. Other species would have followed protocol, avoided attachment, maintained professional distance. Only humans would risk their mission to comfort a frightened child. Only humans would mourn the loss of a single alien refugee among thousands. Zara tugged on Marcus's uniform sleeve. Can you stay this time, please? Marcus looked around the room at the assembled aliens beings from dozens of different worlds and species, all watching him with expressions ranging from curiosity to respect to something approaching awe. I think, he said slowly, I can arrange some extended shore leave. The little alien girl smiled, and in that moment, Marcus understood why humanity had been invited to join the Galactic Council, despite being the youngest species in known space. It wasn't their technology, or their military might, or their diplomatic skills, Dot. It was their capacity to love across the void between worlds, to see family and strangers, to find hope in the darkest moments, and to keep promises that others would. Consider meaningless, Dot. It was, quite simply, their humanity. And sometimes that was enough to change everything.